Good evening, everyone. Apologies for the slight delay. We're just working through some of the technological issues with hybrid meetings. Before we begin, we'll call this meeting to order at 18:35, and I'll look to Council colleague, Councillor Wilson, to read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. The municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the territory of the Anishinaabe. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship, and we commit to Indigenous informed decision-making to foster the path towards reconciliation.
Thank you very much. And I have a few remarks here prepared by the mayor. And as you can see, we're down to a bit of a skeleton crew here tonight. The deputy mayor is away and unavailable this evening, and Mayor Peckford is online but unable to chair tonight's meeting, so she is attending virtually. So many of you were enjoying some March break fun, I'm sure, last week. Hopefully everybody got some well-deserved time together and enjoyed a bit of a break as the seasons are slowly turning. So whether it was time spent traveling, getting outdoors, or just slowing down, it's always a welcome opportunity to recharge as we look forward to the change of the seasons and hopefully enjoy some spring very soon. The Bell Hall announcement was made last week. I'd like to highlight some of this major announcement. It's an exciting step forward for our community with a municipal investment of approximately $4.75 million. We've successfully leveraged over $24 million in federal funding to deliver 60 new affordable homes for seniors and veterans right here in North Grenville. This is a strong example of how local leadership and partnership can deliver real, tangible results for our residents. It's an exciting new opportunity that we're looking forward to seeing develop over the next year and a half. This week, a reminder that our Mayor's Address and Business Milestone Recognition event is coming up. That will be hosted on Thursday evening, co-hosted by the Chamber of Commerce and the BIA. We're thrilled to see such strong interest. The tickets are nearly sold out. For those unable to attend in person, a live stream option will be available, so everyone has the opportunity to participate. It will be a great evening celebrating our local business community and sharing where we are headed as a municipality. Next week, members of council will be attending the Good Roads Conference. This is an important opportunity to connect with municipal leaders from across Ontario, share best practices, and continue advocating for the infrastructure investments our growing community depends on. And we are officially in the spring holiday season. Last weekend, our Indigenous Advisory Circle hosted a lovely spring equinox event, and looking ahead to the upcoming long weekend, we'll extend a warm and happy Easter, Passover, or Eid to those who celebrate. I hope this season brings a sense of renewal, connection, and time with loved ones for residents across North Grenville. And with that, we will move ahead with our agenda. So looking for adoption of our agenda. There are no comments. I'd be looking for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan. All those in favor, if there are no comments? Okay, that is passed. Are there any members with declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof for any agenda item this evening? Not seeing any. So the first item on our agenda is a deputation for the Green Shirt Day. Unfortunately, Ms. Voss is not here yet, so I will move to the the recommendation that Council proclaim April 7th, 2026 as Green Shirt Day, and should Ms. Voss arrive later on, we'll give her the opportunity to choose to give her presentation in front of Council. In the meantime, a very important day spearheaded by local youth Ethan Voss in the wake of the tragedies at West, and really focusing on organ donation and the importance of that. So I encourage you to find out more about Green Shirt Day and participate where you can. Any comments or thoughts from members of council? If not, we'll be looking for a mover and seconder for the recommendation that council proclaim April 7th, 2026 as Green Shirt Day. Looking for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor Wilson, Councillor Sullivan and Councillor Wilson. And all those in favor? Fantastic, thank you. First on the list of presentations tonight is the Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment. And we'll welcome, I believe Grace McDonough is online, and is Chris as well? Oh, there we are. Okay, thank you. Chris Burke of Lumex Group. They're joining us this evening to present the Fire Master Plan and Community Risk Assessment. So if you'd like to join us, please. Just the button with the person on it, and you should see a red light there. There you go. Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Oh. Thank you and good evening. On behalf of Chris and myself, we're very happy to be here tonight. I want to apologize immediately for my voice. I did have a lovely March break with my 3 grandchildren, and in return, they shared this with me. So I will certainly try and get through this. If I lose my voice, my colleague Chris will jump in, but we could begin. So next slide, please. And you can go one more, please. So just a little bit about the context of a community risk assessment. So the community risk assessment really identifies which threats a community is likely to face. Ontario Regulation 378/18 requires all municipalities that have fire departments to conduct a community risk assessment every 5 years. It also requires each community risk assessment to examine 9 community profiles. So the 9 community profiles we examined are the geographic profile, the building stock profile, the critical infrastructure profile, the demographic profile, hazard profile, public safety response entity profile, and the community services profile, your economic profile, and the past loss and event history profile. Next slide, please. Our approach and methodology is this. There was a startup meeting conducted, and then we began the stakeholder engagement. And at this point, I would certainly like to thank the chief and the deputy chief and their admin assistant, without whom we wouldn't have the data to write a community risk assessment. The community risk assessments are very data-driven documents. We look at what has happened in terms of responses by the fire department over the last 5 years. And there's quite a bit to collect. And so thanks to them for all the work that they did in giving us the data to develop the community risk assessment. Once we had the data, then we simply move ahead to draft and final report. Next slide, please. And you can go one more, please. Thank you. So the community risk assessment is all about calculating risks. So it's calculating risks by first determining the likelihood that a risk would occur in the community. And we do that by looking again at past data, at what has actually occurred in the last 5 years. And then we look at what are the consequence levels. So once we've established the risks, what are the consequence levels of those risks? And we identify them. And then we input the likelihood and the consequence levels into a matrix that was designed by the province, and we score them through that matrix. There's several different criteria in the matrix that we score. We score on life safety, on evacuation, on things like will it affect critical infrastructure, and so on. So once we have gone through those, we have a score. And as you can see by the slide, it ranges from very low, 0 to 30, to 150 and up, which is extreme. I'm happy to say there are no extreme or very high risks that we identified in North Grenville. Next slide, please. So there is one high risk in North Grenville, and that is fire in residential occupancies. And I think it's safe to say that that is a risk that we see across the province. It's scored as a 96, and again, that is based on the call volume for residential fires. And certainly, despite the work that's being done in code enforcement and in public education across the province, this continues to be the leading risk for a lot of communities. Coming in second was fire and explosion in industrial occupancies. And again, it scored an 85, which is moderate risk. Severe weather events scored an 84, which is also a moderate risk. Fire in vulnerable occupancies scored an 80. A few years ago, this would have scored much higher, but with legislation requiring sprinklers, requiring the fire department to inspect vulnerable occupancies annually, and requiring the fire department to also audit or be present for a fire drill to evaluate staff's response. And those drills are based on the lowest staffing level in the facility. So that has gone a long way to reducing that risk. So the buildings are safer and staff is better trained. Highway and road incidents scored a 78 at a moderate risk. Fire, wildland fire and uncontrolled outdoor fires came in at 66, which is moderate. Rail incidents, 65. Fire in commercial occupancies, a 64. And again, because the inspection program is really working here, those commercial occupancies are having regular inspections and code enforcement, and that goes a long way to reducing the number of incidents. And then again, human health emergency, which is still on our radar, scored a 60 at low. And that's because it's been almost 5 years since we experienced the pandemic, so it's starting to fade a little bit. Next slide, please. So for every risk we identify, we write a risk treatment plan. And in that risk treatment plan, we will look at one of the following options: avoid or eliminate the risk if possible, mitigate, so reduce the likelihood of the impact of the risk, accept and take no action, transfer the risk to another party. So in some cases, that would be a rail or somewhere where there's another party directly responsible, or share. So some of the risks are shared with another party. Next slide, please. And we could go one more, talk about the top 5 risks. So number 1 was fire and residential occupancy. So there were 42 lost fires at residential occupancies in North Grenville from 2020 to 2024. And the dollar loss collectively of those incidents was $8,782,700. Those fires also resulted in 1 injury and 4 deaths. So I think you can see why that still remains a significant risk in the community. And the risk treatment plan is to mitigate. So continue to deliver the smoke and carbon monoxide program that meets the needs and circumstances of North Grenville, and ensure that the results of that program are tracked. So setting some targets and tracking the results. Analyze the types of fires and other incidents that are occurring in order to identify trends, and develop then a public education program to help mitigate the identified threats. Inspect selected residential occupancies such as multi-unit dwellings on a regular basis. Ensure that property owners are submitting their fire safety plans. So again, this would be multi-unit residents to the North Grenville Fire Services for review and approval. So that is number 1 risk. Next slide, please. Number 2 is fire explosion in an industrial occupancy. There were 2 fires at industrial occupancies in North Grenville from 2020 to 2024. And collectively, those incidents resulted in a dollar loss of $2,104,000. Again, the risk treatment plan is to mitigate, to ensure the prevention policy includes an inspection schedule that sets a regular frequency for inspections at industrial occupancies. ensure that North Granville Fire Services has the time and resources needed to inspect the industrial occupancies on a regular basis, and complete the pre-incident planning process for high-risk industrial occupancies. So pre-incident planning process is often done by fire prevention staff initially. So they will go in and look at the building, look at the hazards in the building, the systems in the building, and write a pre-plan. And then that is then shared with suppression crews, and it can be a really valuable tool for them if they have to respond to a call in an industrial occupancy. It often will include floor plans as well. So they certainly have an idea of what they're going into before they arrive. And then review the fire safety plans and the material data sheets for industrial occupancies in North Granville. Next slide, please. And the third risk was the severe weather event. And as you all know here, North Granville experiences various severe weather events such as snowstorms, windstorms, and droughts. These incidents often cause issues on the nearby highway and the county roads. And when issues occur on major roads, traffic may be rerouted through the town, through Kemptville, through North Granville, which can severely impact local roadways. So to mitigate the risk, continue to provide public education about the importance of emergency preparedness, the 72-hour emergency kits, including what to do before, during, and after emergencies, and share that with applicable external partners to implement public education initiatives that teach residents about emergency preparedness. The initiative should address topics such as the importance of having a 72-hour emergency kit and what should be contained in those kits. Next slide, please. So the risk number 4 is fire in vulnerable occupancies. From 2020 to 24, North Granville Fire Service did not respond to any fires in vulnerable occupancies, which is really good news. However, fires in vulnerable occupancies still account for 1% of all fires in structures in the province of Ontario between 2020 and 2022. So it's still happening despite all the work being done. As such, North Granville Fire Services should continue providing the applicable services for these occupancies. And again, that's an annual inspection, an annual witnessing of the fire drill. So it certainly is helping. Continue to inspect and continue to witness the fire drills and continue to complete pre-planning process for all vulnerable occupancies. Next slide, please. The last of the top 5 risks in North Granville was highway and road incidents. So North Granville Fire Services has responded to several emergencies on the highway and county roads and municipal roads that run through North Granville. And the way to treat this risk is to mitigate, to ensure that North Granville Fire Services personnel receive ongoing training about vehicle firefighting, auto extrication, hazardous material responses, and certainly road and highway incidents that involve electric vehicles. So next slide, please. So the next steps are to review the community risk assessment annually and to update as necessary. To develop a process for collecting and maintaining the data. I spoke earlier about the amount of data that goes into a community risk assessment, and no one is collecting the data in a way that really fits with this. So certainly now that the fire department has been through this process once, it should help them to continue to collect the data in a way that will be useful. And use the CRA for future strategic planning for the fire service. And there is one more risk I'd just like to speak to today, and it's not necessarily a risk to the community, but it can be a risk to the fire service, and that is the risk of lightweight construction in our buildings. In 2022, the fire marshal's office sent out a directive that to develop a process for capturing and recording lightweight construction where it's being used. And I can say that in most municipalities, this was not previously being done. And in some municipalities, it's still in its infant stages. It is really important that this information is collected. The best way to collect the information is through the building permit process. So as a developer or someone comes in to get a building permit, one of the questions that should be asked is, will this building contain lightweight construction? And then that box can be ticked. It's recorded in your impact data, and we know that that building has lightweight construction. Lightweight construction behaves differently in the case of a fire. It burns more quickly. It can burn up to, I think, faster, often within 4 to 8 minutes, compared with what they call legacy construction, traditional construction, with an 18 to 20 minute burn time. So it's significant, and it's significant for the fire department not knowing when they go to a call whether a building contains lightweight construction or not. Now, we can look back and look at residential homes that have been built in the last 20 years. Most of those will contain some components of lightweight construction. But we're now seeing lightweight construction used in commercial buildings and even in some light industrial, where it's not so obvious that there might be a component of lightweight construction in those buildings. So certainly a good idea to begin tracking it and to keep that information handy. And that's all I have to share with you this evening, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the details of the risks and so on that you've mentioned. I see that Councillor Wilson has her hand up, so we'll go to you first.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Am I addressing you as Chair? Okay, thank you to our presenters. I caught your last little detail there about lightweight construction. What types of materials are listed as lightweight construction materials?
It's a pre-engineered material, so it's most likely you're going to see it in roof trusses and floor joints, and that's where we see it used most frequently.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, Councillor Sullivan? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to our presenters. Thank you for the very thorough presentation. I also was wondering what defined lightweight construction, so thank you, Councillor Wilson, for asking that. Regarding vulnerable occupancy fires, you mentioned 1% between 2020 and 2022. All of the other data that you presented went up to 2024. So am I correct in assuming that then there was 0 between 2022 and 2024?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. No, in fact, we only recently got 2023 data from the province, and it's still sitting at 1.3%. So there hasn't been a change in the data.
Okay.
But this there's always a lag,
Right.
getting that data. So that's what it is.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mayor Peckford, do you have any questions for the presenters?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, great. Through you, Chair, I noted that the consultants highlighted something that is fairly common across Ontario, which is that stronger risk when it comes to residential dwellings. And obviously North Grenville, certainly as a predominantly residential community, would confront that risk, which I think is par for the course. I'm just curious if through the best practices that they may have observed of other municipalities, is there any particular risk mitigation strategy when you see a community that's heavily residential?
Through the chair to you, Madam Mayor. The best mitigation strategy for residential fires is public education. That's really where it begins, and certainly public education in the school system, as much as you can send out to the public to keep them aware of how to develop their own home fire safety plans, hazards in the home. There are programs that are available through the Ontario Fire Marshal's office that can help the public education divisions of fire services to have a program ready that they can deliver. But certainly the other component, and you're not quite there yet, but I think you're going to be there in the near future, is when you're looking at high-rise buildings and high-density buildings, then you certainly want code enforcement to ensure that those buildings have the life safety systems and that they're operating as they should be.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much. I don't have any questions related to your presentation. I think it was very thorough and appreciate the context that you provided. I will turn to Chief Ursulak to see if you would like to add anything to what was presented and any perspective from the fire services side of the house.
Through you, Chair. Through you, Madam Chair. It was an absolute pleasure just working with Lumex on this project. I learned a lot from the process as well, and everything they've outlined tonight. I totally agree with. And yeah, we do need to. You'll see in the fire master plan how we're going to mitigate this a bit more, but our community is growing at such a rapid pace that, this is a huge step towards that in completing this risk assessment. And you'll see in the fire master plan how it will all tie together with our growth.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate you being here tonight.
Do you want to switch sides or are you okay?
And moving on to the fire master plan. Okay, over to you, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Trust everybody can hear me. A little raspy as well. Next slide, please. So this is the project summary portion of the two different projects that were worked on here, the community risk assessment. And dovetailed with that is the fire master plan, which is going to outline some different strategies and some similar strategies, but all in the same vein of working towards best outcomes for the municipality. Next slide. So, so the guiding principles that we utilized in the fire master plan outline was what is best for the fire protection services for this municipality. And when we look at it from a couple of perspectives, but as you note in the first couple of instances, we're talking about safety of firefighters, safety of residents. We can include safety of the visitors to the town of North Grenville and Kemptville. And most certainly, what are the most cost-effective fire protection services for North Grenville? Which fire protection services will help North Grenville avoid unnecessary future costs? And the theme throughout was let the facts guide our decisions and let the facts guide our recommendation regarding the best fire practices for North Grenville. Next slide, please. As my colleague had aptly said within the community risk assessment, there are 3 lines of defense that the Ontario Fire Marshal utilizes as guidelines. Over time, they've been massaged a little bit. They previously used to have the first line of defense, fire suppression. That's been inverted, thankfully. And now the 3 lines of defense are public education, code enforcement and inspections, and lastly, fire suppression. Performing fire suppression services obviously has a much higher cost than delivering public education and code enforcement initiatives. So implementing a proactive, like we were just referring to in the last question, implementing a proactive fire prevention initiative can help reduce the need for suppression services. And that goes to the last question that was most recently asked. So thank you. Our areas of review carried a wide range of things. And this is really the guiding principle is to do a complete facility audit of the fire service. Everything, and I won't read them all, but they're there. Everything from, legislation and standards, bylaws, all the way down to training, certification, organizational review, response, and water supply. So it's a multitude of things. If you've seen the Fire Master Plan or had a chance to read the draft, each one of these has a specific content package for each one of the topics. And we addressed every one of them. And each one of those topics had a specific recommendation or number one, observations on what we saw, the facts of what we saw, and then recommendations about what to do within a specific area, whether it was bylaws, communications, or emergency management requirements. Next slide, please. Sorry, I will add to the last slide. You don't need to go back, but as my colleague had said a minute ago, certainly huge support for the accumulation of the mountains of data that is required to get through a fire master plan. So a huge thank you to the chief and his staff for being able to bring all that data to us and help us get through a lot of that data, because that is the key element of understanding a fire master plan, that we're interpreting the data in the proper fashion, and the data is the fact driving element in this context. Next slide, please. So the current strengths within the municipality, well, North Grenville Fire Services focused on providing essential services. Council and North Grenville Fire Services and senior staff members have both worked hard to ensure that the fire department is well equipped to do the job, that they're well equipped to provide the services the community expects of them, that council expects of them. And overall, as a result of that, there is a very high level of commitment and morale within the North Grenville Fire Service, which is evident every time we came down. It was very evident about how excited people were to get through this entire document and make it work for this municipality. Next slide. There are some challenges, mind you, and that's not uncommon in any municipality across the entire province, as certainly I've seen in a number of fire master plans, but it can be difficult for the chief and his staff to ensure adequate emergency response times and coverage due to the complexity of emergencies and the level of growth in the community. This community has experienced explosive growth in the last year or two, and the complexity, or going to calls, as we say in the fire service, going to calls have become much more complex. Nothing is considered routine, and it puts extra added emphasis on every responder. Additionally, some volunteer personnel may not be immediately available during daytime hours. And this is something that is evident in a lot of fire services across the province. This has an impact on North Grenville Fire Services during the daytime response, and we have recommendations coming up a little later on. Furthermore, it can be difficult to ensure that fire prevention and public education programs are implemented and delivered throughout the community. And that's also a byproduct of sufficient staff and volunteers that they utilize to deliver such programs in order to get that message out to the communities. Next slide, please. So as a result of completing the Fire Master Plan, we have 38 recommendations to council. I will tell you right at the outset, my presentation only contains 10. And I say that because not that any one is diminished from another. However, when we look at the considerations within a fire master plan and a recommendation, there are certain things that we have to ensure we do. One is that we're compliant with the regulations in Ontario. 2, those things that require council approval. 3, those things that require budgetary considerations for members around this table and the fire chief, and what the time frame is when we're talking about recommendations. And that time frame, at least in the report, just by way of explaining it, runs from short term, which is less than 2 years, to medium term, which is 2 to 5 years, and long-term 5 years and greater, because a fire master plan hopefully will last for a 5 to 10 year period before we have to maybe write a new one, or at least we're reassessing the status of the fire master plan every year. But some projects within the fire master plan may be immediate or short-term, and some may be longer term because of the complexities of what we're looking at. So those 38 recommendations are designed to prioritize the safety of residents and firefighters and visitors to the community. The recommendations are all within North Grenville's means to implement, and they include ways for North Grenville to act cost-effectively whenever possible. Overall, the Fire Master Plan outlines strategies and resources that will help council and will help North Grenville Fire Services and the chief provide an appropriate level of service to the community now and in the coming years. And over that span, as I said, could be up to 10 years. Next slide, please. Next slide. So some of the key themes in the report of the 10 that I spoke to are recommendation number 8.1 and 8.4, and they're similar in that they both touch on a similar topic, although they're in different parts of the document. North Grenville should consider assigning emergency management responsibilities to the current administrative assistant position, not the individual, but the position. That position's job title should then be changed to Fire and Emergency Services Coordinator. Recommendation 8.4 is North Grenville should designate, if they so choose, to build a new fire station that will replace station number 2 in Oxford Mills and designate it as an alternative emergency operations center. This station would have shower facilities, accommodate meal preparation, offer convenience for community emergency management coordination during the coordination of operations for senior staff members. So later on in the report, I'll talk about the recommendation on Oxford Mills Fire Station. And if you so choose to move ahead with that, this is part and parcel of that process, is to utilize that building as a coordination center for senior staff members for the CEMC. Next slide, please. My colleague spoke to this topic in the community risk assessment, and that's why community risk assessments and fire master plans do dovetail in a lot of instances. So we're talking about similarities within the same context. So North Grenville's fire services, as recommendation 10.2, should ensure that the fire prevention officers are consulted about site plans and construction of all new buildings in North Grenville, especially now where we're having so much intensification and growth, that are all covered under Part 3 of the defined in the Ontario Building Code. Specifically, consultations should focus on life safety systems and new buildings. And we touched on that a little bit about the new building construction. The next recommendation is that North Grenville Fire Services hire an additional full-time fire prevention officer / firefighter. And this will be a little more evident later on when we talk about staffing. The officer should work Monday to Friday in order to bolster the daytime level coverage for the fire department. And as we said earlier in the report, one of the challenges that North Grenville certainly is seeing is that daytime response to get vehicles out of the station and on scene in terms of what we call the effective response force on the ground is always a challenge for not only this municipality, but many. So one of the mitigating solutions in this context is by hiring an additional fire prevention officer / firefighter, you gain the capability of being able to do the inspections and the public education in that context within the community because of the growth. And number two, they're available during the daytime should they be called for an emergency response to help support the number of individuals that would get to a fire as an effective response force to ensure that we have sufficient people to perform their jobs safely. Still continuing with the fire prevention and public education. And I think my colleague spoke to this as well earlier, that North Grenville Fire Services should monitor the intensification of high-density areas and municipal growth in North Grenville in order to ensure that the fire department can match its available resources with current and evolving and anticipated risks in the community. So that goes hand in hand with the notion of if you adopt a recommendation to hire an additional fire prevention officer, that they also can cross-serve as a volunteer, as a firefighter within that context to assist with the volunteers that would be responding during daytime, which is a critical time. Next slide, please. This goes hand in hand with the response criteria. So responses, or what we call the effective response force within a fire service, the chief should continue to monitor the effective response force deployed by North Grenville Fire Services, focusing on whether the fire department needs to increase staffing levels to meet that demand, particularly during regular business hours and sometimes weekends and holidays. Based on recent reports and fire service trends within the fire service, the fire chief should also look at longer term, consider hiring additional full-time firefighters in the long term in order to address critical service gaps, rising call volumes, and declining volunteer numbers. And declining volunteer numbers is not isolated to North Grenville. Throughout the province of Ontario, the major challenge for volunteer fire departments within the province and somewhat in North Grenville is to ensure that you have an effective response force, daytime, nighttime, weekends, but declining numbers through recruitment and retention requirements because of the demands placed on volunteers today versus 10 years ago. Next slide, please. Related facilities, North Grenville Fire Services chooses to replace station number 2 in Oxford Mills. The new station should include a few things. Number one, because we're also recommending that it would be an alternate location for the CEMC. The fire chief and senior management team in North Grenville should consider incorporating both fitness facilities in the facility and incorporating a training facility on site of the new fire station if you're planning on replacing the one in Oxford Mills. I'll touch on it a little bit more on the next slide. And that recommendation, next slide please, is that North Grenville should also think about acquiring 5 to 10 acres of land near the village of Oxford Mills to use as land for a new fire station to replace the current Oxford Mills location. The extra land would be to also have the capacity down the road to potentially build a small training facility, train volunteer firefighters. Ultimately, long-term, it could be utilized to rent out to other municipalities as a regional training center if that was so inclined. But during that preliminary design of a potential station in Oxford Mills, my apologies, station number 2, the municipality should investigate building a net zero neutral facility. North Grenville should also consider obtaining net zero funding through the Green Municipal Fund in order to support that initiative and mitigate some of the overhead costs that are incurred as a result of building a new station. So just in closing, some of my closing remarks in terms of that, number one is, again, I'd like to thank the fire service for the huge amount of cooperation, data, and information that was given to the Lumex team, to a number of us, to analyze things thoroughly and effectively to ensure that we're presenting the right information. Number 2 is that this fire master plan is a living document and should be reviewed on an ongoing basis. And certainly with a view to ensuring that the chief and his staff have sufficient resources to prepare for any response with an effective response force by ongoing monitoring of the data, ongoing evaluation of staffing, and use the fire master plan, both short-term and long-term, to ensure the needs of the municipality, the safety of firefighters, and the continuance of the fire service is maintained here in North Grenville. Thank you, and I'm open to any questions.
Thank you very much for a lot of details. I look forward to looking at the rest of the recommendations and bringing that all together. I think that some of the points you have made, certainly around Station 2 and acquiring more land and creating a newer space with more upgraded facilities in a better location, is a conversation we've already had at this table. So it's good to see that in there. And also the comments regarding staffing and permanent staffing, full-time staff is a conversation that has been had in a few different ways here. And it's good to hear it from a different perspective coming to us as to where the benefits are and where the planning should be set in place. Look at my council colleagues if there are any questions. Yes, I see the mayor's hand, so I'll go to Mayor Peckford and then I'll go to Councillor Wilson. Go ahead, Mayor Peckford.
Thank you, Councillor Strachan. And I don't want to displace Councillor Wilson if she was first in line. I was just making sure that you could see me.
You can go right ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to obviously thank the consulting team for their excellent work, and I know our fire chief and the team cares deeply about the health and well-being of the fire service, as well as its future. I wanted to ask a couple of questions about several of the recommendations that weren't highlighted in your report. One of which is around the development and implementation of a mental health wellness program. Obviously, I sit at the county table where there's a lot of discussion right now about ensuring that all of our first responders have access to the appropriate trauma-informed mental health supports and other training. I'm just curious to know, because I know, in the space where increasingly there's heightened awareness about the impacts, the mental health impacts on first responders, what would be a critical next step from your perspective in terms of pursuing this? Because obviously I think this council would and the municipality as a whole would care a great deal about making sure that our firefighters do have access to appropriate psychological care and other mental health wellness programs.
Through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor. Good question. I guess so. The fire service currently has a program that they take their firefighters through. However, I think one of our recommendations was obviously to augment that program and to offer more intense training within the program itself. There are a variety of programs out there, that is offered through various groups, Road to Mental Readiness and adapting to fire service calls. In addition to that, I think it's important to ensure that the municipality has a policy or the fire service has a policy to ensure that those individuals that need help have it. And by structuring the program with the adequate training, and it should be on a regular basis. It should be done at least once a year in terms of ensuring firefighters, we call it a mandatory training certification, that they have that training. Setting up a peer support program within the municipality, within the fire service. A peer support program is very, very beneficial because it's coming from in-house, it's coming from your peers. So I think if the fire service wants to move to the next step, utilizing the current program they're using, number one is working, but they need to take a next step in terms of having people available to the firefighters, either through a peer support program or through existing EAP, or available through employee assistance plans through the municipality, where members of not only the firefighters, because it affects the entire family by virtue of the nature of the job, to have that available to them on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm glad it's in the recommendations, because I do believe it's an area where we absolutely want to support our fire service. So I hope that in subsequent discussions, certainly with our CAO and our chief, we can activate that relatively quickly. Chair, I just have one other question before ceding the floor to Councillor Wilson.
Yes, please go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I know there's also this is again around occupational health and safety. A proper ventilation system should be installed at Station 1 in Kentville, and I believe we're talking about our primary station. It strikes me as odd that it's a relatively new facility, so it would just be helpful to have a little more context on how is it that the current building wouldn't have a proper ventilation system, or is it that ventilation systems have gotten more sophisticated? Obviously, I think, again, as a municipality, we want to ensure that everything is in place so that our firefighters, can be safe and effective. So just looking for a little insight on that one.
Thank you. So through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor. Yes, so there is a recommendation within the fire master plan touching on containment of contaminants within the fire halls and the need to evacuate those contaminants. It's possible that when the facility was built, that wasn't a primary consideration, even though it's not that old. A lot of other new stations have gone ahead and put minimal extraction systems in. There's a variety of them on the market. A lot of stations have an automatic alarm system that opens louvers or opens doors to take the contaminants out. But your question is well placed because we know through WSIB and through employee health and wellness that one of the key ingredients is to ensure that not only contaminants out of the fire hall, but the protection of personal protective equipment that may be stored in the fire hall needs to be addressed in order to mitigate long-term exposure to contaminants, whether they be through diesel or off-gassing in many circumstances. So that's certainly an initiative that in a new station or in an older station that may be retrofitted, there are ways to mitigate that. And it's a primary consideration for firefighter health and safety and for the well-being of anybody, working within the building, whether it's somebody coming in to look at a truck or do an inspection, or whether it's the fire chief and staff. So, yeah, I would say that's something it's in the report. It's something to be considered for a new facility. Even under the fire code, it's a consideration to ensure that they have the proper monitoring of gas systems within buildings to ensure that we're protecting those individuals who are utilizing them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Councillor Wilson, please go ahead.
Thank you, through Chair. Just a few remarks. I know here that we are able to recruit firefighters and volunteer firefighters very well through our past. And how close are we to becoming or needing a full-time fire crew?
So I let me ask through you, Madam Chair. For that specific answer, there's a couple of things that we would really need to look at, or the fire chief needs to look at. And I mentioned it a little earlier in terms of the effective response force. So it's a question of continual monitoring of the number of responses that are occurring within the year or 6 months, or to continually monitor that number, because under the regulations of the National Fire Protection Association, Regulation 1720, it's important to have a specific number of firefighters on scene within so many minutes. And when we looked at some of the data, the numbers were pretty good. There are some times where they didn't achieve the right level and many times where they did. But that's something that the fire chief has to be monitoring continually. And once he starts to see a bit of a drop off, one of the recommendations that we made was the potential of hiring an additional fire prevention officer as an interim measure to ensure that we have sufficient resources on scene. We can only make that determination, and that's for this municipality and many others that we've dealt with. We can only make that determination once we start to see a plotted map of the effective response force and what the timeframes are within the regulations of 1720 to get somebody to the fire in time, and that they can complete the critical tasks that are required of them on scene. Once we start to fall off that chart and see that we're not getting the right people there, I mean, that's a decision that the fire chief and his staff would talk about and say, you know what, we've gone through 2 or 3 events where we need to maybe look at other ways to mitigate this. Specifically, I say this only because once you make that decision to hire full-time staff, you're going down a whole new road.
Yeah.
And, it comes with extra costs. It comes with extra workforce and all the associated products that come as a result of hiring additional staff. So in the past, a number of times we've made recommendations like this, and it started with adding a fire prevention officer or two fire prevention officers as an outset to ensure that they're making the requirements to get to the scene. The chief, I know, would monitor over the course of the whole year his volunteer firefighters to see how many people have or have not responded to individual calls. And it's a fine line because a lot of the volunteers that are working all day obviously can't be available right away unless those businesses within the municipality allow them to respond during their work time. And certainly for smaller municipalities where a lot of people are self-employed, it may not be as feasible because they just can't walk out on a job in the middle of something. So this is a good question, but it has to be identified on a slow basis. And whether that means within the next year as they monitor the staffing levels and the response grids, or whether it means the next 2 years, it's something that the chief has to have a pulse on to ensure that he knows when the right time is to make that switch.
Okay, so comparatively to other municipalities similar in size and area, that's where I'm coming from.
I see. Okay. So if I look back on the last 8 or 10 fire master plans I've done for other communities, places like, Arnprior, Renfrew, Carleton Place, Perth, places of different sizes, different growth, there's a huge number of factors that are associated with making that decision. And I've seen both. I've seen, without naming the communities, I've seen some communities where they've added 2 or 3 extra fire prevention staff, training officers, and they utilize those for daytime and duty crews. Like, because the chief is on call so frequently, the deputy is on call so frequently, it provides them with the opportunity to spell each other off so they're not running to every event every day 24/7, and reduces burnout at that level. Plus, the chief and his staff also have a job to do, their full-time job. But as a first step, it's a provision to mitigate that first step to hiring full-time. And I think best suited decision for the chief to make once he looks at what his ongoing effective response force is on the ground to do that. To close the loop on your question, I would say I've had communities and other variable communities within Eastern Ontario that have hired full-time firefighters right away and hired extra staff to use the 3 lines of defense on public education and code enforcement to assist their community and reduce the number of fires, as well as being available to respond to fires. So,
All right, thank you.
It's-
I do have a couple more, please, if you'll indulge me. You talked about buildings that are, when they are being built and in the planning stages, are they not typically consulted with our fire department? I thought they were.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Wilson, emergency and protective services are circulated on all development applications and are part of our development review team and do provide comments quite frequently on our development applications.
Okay, so that's what you were referring to? Okay, thank you. I appreciate Mayor Peckford's question. I had similar, both of them. We're working towards building a second fire hall, which we've already been in discussions for. And your recommendation is a net zero, working towards a net zero type building. We are working on a climate action plan, which will help us to get funding for a net zero. So thank you.
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just have a couple of questions. One question for you. Thank you very much again for the presentation, and I'll ask Chief Ursulak my follow-up question. I know you mentioned this is a living document. What is the frequency of a full review for a fire master plan typically?
I mean, our, through you, Madam Chair, our experience in that regard has been within the 5 to 10 year window. I mean, it's a fairly extensive document and makes, as I said at the outset, it makes extensive recommendations both for council and the fire chief to look at short-term, medium-term, and long-term, and whether or not, you know, it has budgetary impacts. So it's hard to quantify when it's good to do. It's not the same regulations as a community risk assessment. It's more open-ended, but we, in our experience, typically look at a 5 to 10 year plan.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't think there are any questions right now for both of you, so thank you very much. Chief Ursulak, though, I do have a question for you. Looking at the list of recommendations, I mean, they vary from mandatory to short-term, long-term, cost, budgetary impact, and so on. What are your next steps with respect to these recommendations?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair. We are working through some of these recommendations right now. There's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of recommendations. Some of which, you know, as we were just talking about with the hiring of another fire prevention officer, that's one way to almost show the way we are trying to be efficient within our fire department by, you know, hiring another prevention officer will allow us to do obviously more prevention to try and keep up with the growth, but it'll also add that daytime response and build up that daytime team that we're experiencing right now. So in doing that, we're able to mitigate costs as well, because we all know that when we start talking full-time, there's much cost involved there. So what we're trying to do is, we know that at some point, as Chris was saying, we need to move towards that. And it's obviously, as Councillor Wilson said, when are we going to do that? And again, I echo what Chris said, we are on top of that all the time. We're working, trying to find ways that we can be efficient and yet keep up with the growth and yet provide the service that council wants us to provide. And we're working towards that every day. We've reviewed most of the recommendations already in it, which some we've already started working on as far as health and wellness, you know, even cancer prevention. It was mentioned earlier that the air system, the evacuation system that we have. So if I could answer that, I believe that Mayor Peckford brought that up. It was a great question, but what it is actually is back 15 years ago, it's hard to believe it's been 15 years or more actually now.
Yeah.
Back in those days, the cancer prevention part of it, the aspect of it all that we're into now wasn't as prevalent. And we do have an evacuation system. It much works just like Chris was mentioning. It measures the amount of particulate in the air, and it turns on a system of louvers and fans that evacuates that air very quickly and replaces it with fresh air from outside the building. So that is in place right now. Newer buildings built within the last number of years, and older buildings as well, even in the day, had systems where they hook right to the trucks. The truck starts up, all that exhaust, as soon as it starts and it's going to leave the station, the pipes come off and they go out. But they have better evacuation systems than we have. The new station will have that type of system in it. Also, you can see, talking about the new station, the EOC that was mentioned. So that's an emergency operations center to provide another location that, in terms of an emergency, is far enough away from Kemptville, from our, you know, whether it's here or wherever in Kemptville, gives us a kind of a, you could say on the other side of the tracks kind of approach there for an EOC. So again, we are looking to not just build a fire station, but build an emergency operations center, possibly a training center. We're trying to put as many hats on that piece of land and that building as we can to make it that much more I mean, obviously the taxpayers, whoever, you know, keeping costs down as much as we can. So we're always moving in that direction. We are working on these, DC and I have conversations every day on how we're moving forward, how we're going to move forward, because it is a top question on our minds. When are we going? I get that question all the time. When are you going full-time? When is there more full-time firefighters? And what we're doing now, as you can see, is with the implementation of our full-time training officer, we have one full-time prevention officer. When we have two, you know, DC, Rowan, and myself, you know, we have a great full-time daytime team now. So we are able to, plus the great volunteers that we have coming into the station during the day. We're very fortunate to have, again, some of these, you know, volunteers that work within our municipality, within town, which have been great. But again, every day it's, you know, in a number of years, we are going to have to look at more full-time staff. So that's just a reality. The social changes of the volunteers themselves, everything has changed in a way that, you know, 20 years ago, 25 years ago, a volunteer was different than it was nowadays. Now the priorities on everybody, the social priorities, the cost of a liter of gas, as we see, just to come to the fire station and do their job is becoming more and more costly every day. So, you know, we have to consider all these factors every single day. So, and I think we're working towards that and we're moving forward. So if that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. And then some. Thank you very much. There's definitely a lot of considerations and a lot of recommendations. It's a bit of a balancing act. So, yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Strachian.
Yes, I was just going to ask you, Mayor Peckford, is your hand still up?
I just had a quick comment, and I know the chief and I have discussed this. So, I think I'm saying this because I think it was an important collaboration with the fire service was the reconsideration of the honoraria, so that we were certainly addressing some of the financial realities of having to volunteer for the service. And I just wanted a very quick comment from the chief. My understanding through you, Chair, to the chief is that the change in the compensation structure has certainly contributed to perhaps a better retention of our current fire volunteers, notwithstanding the fact there's a lot of other realities in terms of who can show up when, given that many of our professionals in the community work obviously in Ottawa and, you know, in other places. But I understand that as a council working so closely with our chief, we did, I think, work hard to identify that improved compensation was necessary. And my understanding is that that has made a meaningful difference. But perhaps the chief could just comment briefly on that, because I just wanted to be clear in my own mind that that did have some sort of impact.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair, to the mayor. Yes, definitely. And I did want to mention that has definitely, due to the economic times we're living in and, you know, generally what we're into right now, that has definitely helped. I would like to say also that it's not only that, but it's generally, it's the backing of council. And this was expressed to Lumex the whole time when we were gathering data. The support that we've received from council and staff here has been tremendous, which, as we're learning and as the consultants did say to me a number of times, that's not really the norm. So I would definitely like to say that, yes, that compensation that was allowed and by council for the volunteers has created, yes, it's definitely has made the world a difference, as well as all, but not to be, how do I say, in the shadows behind all the other work the council has allowed us to do and has backed us up on. So we'd like to say, you know, definitely, as I've said to Lumex, that's a huge thing for the fire service. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm glad that that has resulted in, given very positive results for the volunteers at the fire services. So thank you. Councillor Wilson, go ahead.
Yeah, just quickly through you, Madam Chair, to all the public or whoever's out there listening. I remember back in the day when the fire department was begrudged a foot of hose. Like there were times when the council did not even want to award money for things like that. So, and basically they said, oh, fire department just comes to us for more hose. But you know what? It's more than that. So when you do get your new fire station, I want to come and work in the gym.
Thank you very much. One final look around, no hands raised, and the mayor's hand is no longer raised, so we're good. Thank you very much for the presentations. This is very informative, and I appreciate the time that you spent with the team to make this happen. So thank you very much. So with that, we will look to a mover and seconder to receive the fire master plan, moved by Councillor Wilson and seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan. All in favor? Say aye. Thank you. So we're looking to take a quick 5-minute break. Yeah, absolutely. And I believe we need to move and second that. So moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan, and we will return at 7:52. Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome back, everyone. And just to go a little bit backwards into our agenda, we're going to invite Ms. Michelle Boss to come up and give a presentation on the Green Shirt Day.
So first of all, I'd like to apologize. I had the times wrong. We were here early for the time we thought it was, which was 7. But I apologize for being late to council and to everyone, which we've never been late to these. It feels strange being here for the first time without Ethan. Since last year, he actually got into the Police Foundations program at Algonquin College and is actually studying for a test and doing some homework tonight, so could not make it. As you guys are aware, Green Shirt Day is to bring awareness to organ and tissue donation and is to honor the lives lost and affected in the Humboldt Bronco crash. Next slide. Logan Belay was 21 when he signed his organ donor card, and he told his family. When Logan Belay died in the crash, his family honored his wishes. Logan's donation saved 6 lives and helped up to 75 others with tissue donation. The bigger impact was the awareness of this donation sparked hundreds of thousands of people to sign their organ donor card and influenced other youth to become aware of the situation. This is now called the Logan Belay effect. Next slide. He inspired our son Ethan, who first came to this council about Green Shirt Day in 2019. He was only 12 years old. We were more nervous than he was. It started at his school, St. Michael Catholic High School. His principal, vice principal, staff, and teachers pushed him to learn about the issue and to push it forward. Many of these students remember this day. They had the first Green Shirt Day in North Grenville at a school. Your council meeting with Ethan, as well as many other people, encouraged him to reach out to other municipalities and cities to have Green Shirt Day declared. This municipality declared Green Shirt Day on April 17th, 2020 in North Grenville in perpetuity to celebrate Green Shirt Day on April 7th. This sparked 12 municipalities and 2 other cities also to pass it. When he was only 16, with help from MPPs Parsa and Clark, he got Private Members Bill 112 passed in Ontario for Green Shirt Day. Over the years, we've been in contact with the Belay family, who have been very supportive of Ethan and his ambition to make awareness to Green Shirt Day. The Belay family has said it's been so important to have a conversation with your family about organ donation. After hearing Logan's story, Ethan had the conversation with us that he wanted to be an organ donor. He was 16. This year, we had the great honor to be invited to the unveiling of the Orgamites, the mighty organs, at the Science and Technology Museum in Ottawa. Who are the Orgamites? A team of life-saving organs found in each one of us. The Orgamites are also known as the mighty organs because they represent the organs most needed for donation and transplantation. Teaching all, including youth, about organs, how to keep them healthy, and how they can be used to help others is so important. Bernie Belay said, "I wanted to share my son's story with my class on Green Shirt Day to encourage family discussions about registering as an organ and tissue donor. But when I went looking for an elementary level education materials about organ donation at the time, I couldn't find any. Then I discovered the Orgamites. It's important to teach kids about citizenship and altruism. Organ donation is not just about death, it's about part of a medical treatment. Let's treat it the same way as we treat the topic of blood donation, the idea of giving and helping other people. The Canadian Transplant Association says that right now, over 4,000 Canadians are waiting for life-saving transplants. Unfortunately, approximately 250 people die each year. While 90% of all Canadians believe in organ donation, only 32% have signed their organ donor card and have had the conversation with their families. This is up actually from when Ethan first started, when it was 25%. In our community, there are many people waiting for organ and tissue donations, including children, youth, and adults. There are also people in our community who have not only signed their organ donor card and spoken to their families, but there are several people in our community who have become living donors and advocates, including Tracy. What people don't know is that you need to register your consent to donate. Even if you sign a donor card, register to ensure that the information is recorded with the Ontario government. When needed, the Trillium Gift of Life Network will use this record to confirm your consent. But they will also reaffirm your consent with your family. So have the conversation. This year's motto for Green Shirt Day is "One decision can create a ripple effect." Be a part of that ripple effect. Green Shirt Day for this year is Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Live life, pass it on.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Every time you come and give these presentations or Ethan's here, it always gives me a lot to think about. And it's a very moving story, and very proud that Ethan was part of making this happen in North Grenville. I certainly have advocated to my children as they've gotten their driver's licenses and so on, that this is an important part of something that they should be considering about an organ donation. So there's certainly a huge ripple effect for the advocacy on behalf of Logan Boulay and his family, as well as what Ethan has done in this community. So thank you very much. And I love that you come back every year and have these conversations, learn something new. The Orgamites, the Mighty Organs, that's a fantastic way to bring that story to younger folks as well. So thank you very much.
It's actually an education plan that is out there available to teachers and to elementary. It's actually meant for ages, I believe it's 5 to 11.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a way of teaching them about it. And it's just, I think it's a great way to move it forward.
Yeah, a way to normalize it, as you mentioned, like blood donation. So yeah, it's fantastic. I don't know if there are any other comments or that I'd like to pass on. Anyway, thank you very much for being here. No worries about being late. That's not a problem. We're flexible. So I'm glad that you can make it and be here to give this presentation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having us. And I had to wear a hat tonight for Ethan, so, you know.
Thank you.
And if I may add, Madam Chair, just please pass on our best wishes to Ethan in his studies, and we really appreciate everything he's done for this. Thank you.
Fantastic. We are all caught up. So now we will move on to the next item, which is our mobility master plan. So I'd like to welcome, who do we have here? We have Jeff Axisa, and is Claire Basinski also online from Dillon Consulting. They're joining us virtually this evening to present phase 1 of the mobility master plan. Welcome both.
Thank you.
So please go ahead and run your presentation as you need to, and we can pause for questions if you would like to, or wait till the end, whatever is your preference. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like me to share the presentation, or will clerks be
I'm just getting it
displaying
up
the
now.
presentation?
Just 1 second.
Okay, thank you.
And in terms of questions, great question to us. I think I speak for both of us that if you do have questions throughout the presentation, we're quite comfortable to take them as we go through the slides. So if you would like to do that, we're happy to answer them as we go along.
Fantastic. We can certainly do that. Can you see the presentation on your end yet?
We can, yes.
Okay, fantastic. So over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So welcome, everyone. Today, my colleague and I, Claire Basinski, are here to provide a brief update of the North Grenville Mobility Master Plan. If you could flip to the next slide, please. So a brief agenda for tonight's presentation is we'll do some brief introductions, and then we'll provide a project overview. We'll speak to the phase 1 engagements, specifically the online survey that we conducted and some of the engagement outcomes we found, and then we'll discuss some of our next steps. Next slide, please. So briefly, just for some introductions on this project. So hi, my name is Jeff Exisa, and I am the consultant project lead with Dillon Consulting. I'm on the line with my colleague Claire Mashinsky from Tate Consulting, who's leading the active transportation component of the study. And I also wanted to acknowledge our municipal counterparts on this study, Colleen Kennedy, who's leading the project on behalf of the municipality, as well as Mike Finley and Eric Sly, who are contributing members from North Grenville. Next slide, please. So what is a mobility master plan? So a mobility master plan is a long-term plan to help guide development and expansion of North Grenville's transportation system into the future. Specifically for this study, we're looking at about the next 20 years. The MMP will set strategies and policies to support planned growth, as well as identify the infrastructure projects to support travel through North Grenville. And both the strategies, policies, and infrastructure will be at a multimodal level. So it'll include cycling, walking, transit, and driving, and other modes potentially like micromobility and things of that nature. So the big focus with a mobility master plan is that it really focuses on all modes. So a mobility master plan is similar to a transportation master plan, but the terminology is slightly different because it really focuses on a multimodal approach, whereas historically transportation master plans have been more auto-focused. So the plans are similar, but we really wanted to emphasize this as a multimodal plan, hence why we decided that the name Mobility Master Plan was the most appropriate for this particular study. Next slide, please. So why undertake this study? So as we heard in the Fire Master Plan, North Grenville is growing and changing. There's a lot of growth that's recently happened within North Grenville, and it's planned to continue to happen over the next 20 years or so. More people are anticipated to move to North Grenville, and more people are expected to visit the area's landmarks and attractions. In addition to the growth, we're also seeing the different travel preferences changing. Historically, people traveled more prevalently in single occupancy vehicles, and we're seeing a shift in travel preferences for more active and multimodal transportation options. And similarly, North Grenville wants to provide safe and efficient transportation system that can accommodate these demands and connect to its community's many assets. So with this study, there was previously a transportation master plan and a commuter cycling strategy that was completed in 2019. So those studies were great, but as we've seen all the growth, it's just time for an update. So hence the mobility master plan.
I also like to always jump in. I apologize, Jeff, because I do just want to, and I always take every opportunity to commend the municipality in the alignment of the work that you're doing. So under this category of why undertake the study, obviously you're in the process and nearing completion of the updated official plan. And this transportation master plan focus, this mobility strategy that we are focusing on is a wonderful segue from the high level official plan that guides all of the land uses within the municipality, including transportation and transportation related topics. And this dovetails very nicely into the work that has already been done. And it actually is an opportunity to take some of those more specialized and focused comments that were received through the OP process, which Dillon Consulting has been working on, and allows us to find a home and a place to address those at a more focused level as well. So you really are positioning yourselves very well from a policy foundation perspective and from a planning preparedness perspective. And in that way, you're not losing the momentum that you've been generating already to address the growth that, as Jeff has already said, you've been experiencing but will continue to come, as well as some of those very significant emerging trends that we're seeing in the space of mobility transportation in and around things like micromobility, complete streets, transportation demand management, and other topics like that. So really a critical time and a huge commendament to the municipality for doing these pieces in tandem and in close succession.
Next slide, please. So where are we in the study process? So the Mobility Master Plan is following municipal class environmental assessment process for master plans. So this is a process that is regulated by the provincial government. And where are we in the process? So we just completed or just wrapping up phase 1 of the study. So what that means is on the onset of the project, we did a lot of sort of policy review, we developed existing conditions, and then we presented that material to the public. And then as part of the public consultation, we engaged with the public to find out where, to review the material that we've had and identify any problems or opportunities. And that's the phase we're at now. Once this phase is complete, we'll move into phase 2, where we will identify specific projects. We'll identify a series of criteria to evaluate the projects. We'll identify various solutions and ultimately the preferred solution. Once we've identified the preferred solutions for various projects, we will then engage the public and stakeholders a second time before we sort of document the process and do some policy work and wrap things up. Next slide, please. So this is an overview of the phase 1 engagement that was completed. And once we get to phase 2, the engagement for phase 2 will follow a similar approach. So we have our North Grenville Mobility Master Plan webpage. So this is a webpage that's hosted by the municipality, and it provides all sorts of information about the project. It has background information, it has a project timeline, it has various different pieces. We recently updated the phase 1 PIC slides there for people who missed the material. And this is also where we hosted an online survey. So we hosted an online survey from February 13th to March 9th, and this allowed members of the public an opportunity to provide us feedback in addition to the in-person and virtual PICs. The online survey and the PIC materials were developed in tandem. So if you were only able to do the survey or you were only able to attend one of the PIC events, the material between them was consistent. So you didn't need to attend more than one. So in addition to the survey, we also held 2 public information centers, one in person and one virtual. And we also held 3 workshops, one with advisory committee workshop, a stakeholder and interest group workshop, and a technical stakeholders workshop. Next slide, please. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague Claire to sort of go over some of the information we discovered from the survey and through phase 1 of engagement.
Great. Thanks very much, Jeff. I do want to mention, I know Jeff had talked about the second round of engagement, but as a team, we're always committed to exploring and evaluating what is working and what might not be working as well as we anticipated it would. We're going to be showing some really strong results from the online survey, but I would be telling a false narrative if I said that we had resounding attendance at our public sessions, both in person and virtually. We had some participants, but we want people to be aware of this project. We want people to be invested in this project. We want people to understand the impact of what a mobility master plan, a long-range strategy like this means for a community like North Grenville. So we continually look to improve and to try to find other opportunities that align with some of those major milestones for the second round of engagement that we'll be hosting. And we'd always be interested in any suggestions about how those could be improved improved and how we could leverage existing platforms or existing events that might give us greater reach or greater access in the community. I think I heard a reference earlier tonight about an Indigenous advisory circle. It would be really interesting in this second round as we start to get towards some more of the, as Jeff said, alternatives, preferred, and recommendations to maybe find some of those more targeted groups that we can reach out to within the scope, of course, that we have. But I do think it is really an important highlight, especially as we're rounding out this first round of engagement, to be able to reflect and consider how we can improve as best as we can. But we were very impressed with the number of responses that we received. I know 109 survey responses might not seem like a huge number, but that is a relatively high number compared to some that we've seen before. And it is possible that some people, and we are seeing this trend in many municipalities, that some people are experiencing a bit of engagement fatigue. And there has been a lot through the official plan. We're actually leveraging our relationship, obviously, with colleagues to bring in input from that process related to transportation to make sure to connect those dots and to make sure that we highlight some of the input and use it through our process as well. But through this survey that we completed, we asked a number of more focused questions that gave us a bit more context about who is in the community and how they are currently utilizing or experiencing transportation, movement, or access within and around the community or even outside of the community. I think I also heard earlier some reference to the fact that we are absolutely more of a residential community here in North Grenville and that there is employment outside of the municipality. So we're also seeing some of those trends come to life through some of the survey responses and be validated through that process. But in this first slide, we have some highlights about the demographics. We are seeing some response rates of mostly people between the ages of 45 and 64 years old, but we did see of the 109 responses, about 25 respondents between 25 and 44 years old, which is a great demographic to hold because typically those are people going through major transitions in their lives where they're seeing shifts in the way that they're moving or needing to move. Think of maybe introducing more family members or possibly even changing from younger family members to older family members. So you're seeing a lot of interesting shifts and experiences within that demographic. We also saw that most respondents, not surprisingly, have a valid driver's license and access to a motor vehicle. So we're already seeing some of those predetermined possible preferences around a primary mode of transportation, or at least having access to that as that primary way of getting around. And in terms of how we are seeing where people are going, we like to not only understand where they live and where they reside, but also where they're working, where they need to go to. It's that origin and destination consideration that we want to get to know a little bit better to understand how we can provide options and linkages in a more effective way. So what we saw in these responses is 38% of respondents that are not currently employed or in school, 32% employed or in school within North Grenville. So this is the inside or outside of the community, which gives us a sense of also the distance of trips. So people who are going longer distances to get to school or employment, or those that are staying within the community. That actually helps us to get a better understanding of what those options are and more realistically could be shorter distance trips versus longer distance trips. So again, we're getting that sense of who people are and starting to scratch the surface on how they're experiencing transportation and modal choices within the community and outside of it currently. Next slide, please. Building upon that, we also asked in more detail about some of those mobility choices. And we asked questions about how people use transportation and for what purpose. So what mode they're currently choosing. And it's interesting and not surprising. Originally, and I also usually like to jump in when Jeff's talking about the mobility master plan, but this project, as you may know, started out as a transportation master plan and an active transportation master plan. Clearly, there is demand for understanding how people move in these distinct modes, whether it's in vehicles or by active modes. And we appreciate deeply the importance of making sure that this plan provides a balanced approach, provides a range of options, provides that multimodal offering for people, because we are seeing that people both like to drive alone, but also walk and use active modes. And when Jeff and I were here for the public information sessions and workshops, we went and did a bit of field work on the day after, and it was very snowy, very icy, not great weather, but people were out running, people were out cycling. So as you know already, I'm just more so affirming that people are wanting to be active. It's a very active community, but it's also this mix of how people are wanting and needing to use things from a day-to-day trip perspective versus from a recreation or fitness perspective. And that's where we get into these trip purposes. And what you see on the slide here is a breakdown of how we're seeing responses in terms of trip purpose. So why do you need to take that trip? What is the purpose of that trip? And the top 3 reasons as shown here are shopping and errands, recreation and leisure, as we mentioned, and actually medical and personal appointments. So we are seeing a nice mix of day-to-day trips as well as those more recreation and fitness trips. And this is an interesting trend that's happening in the mobility conversation as opposed to transportation, is that we're now also seeing the importance of acknowledging and knowing and planning for the fact that people are taking multiple different types of trips within one day. I'm not sure about you, but for me, I'm picking up my kids from school, I'm going to meetings for work, I'm going to an appointment, I'm maybe on a good day going to the gym. So, we are seeing this more diverse and this more broad range of needs for the transportation system that have to accommodate more of these trips throughout the day. It's not the peak periods on one end or another as much anymore. It's trying to make sure that the system is responsive to how people need to move when we are seeing more and more trips happening and more demands for day-to-day travel. Next slide.
Councillor Chair,
yeah.
it's Mayor Peckford. I apologize for intervening.
No, I offered it.
I just wondered if, okay, thank you. Chair, would you mind if I just asked a question at this juncture?
Please go right ahead.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, and of course we as a council have anticipated with great enthusiasm a report on the development of the mobility master plan. And I keep hearing the language of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess as someone with 3 children, only one of whom now has a driver's license and is still quite tentative, I find the terminology of choice interesting because I think in the absence of other safe mechanisms by which to arrive at certain places within the community or outside of the community, the word choice strikes me as odd, right? I think you spoke of being a parent. We know that we're a very large rural urban municipality, and practically speaking, as much as it might be nice to envision arriving in certain places, even within the community on foot or by cycling, if the weather is good, very key safety and feasibility considerations come into play. So I'd just love to hear a little bit more about why the language of choice is dominant in your presentation. Not because, of course, I don't totally appreciate that many of us do make those choices, but when we think of some of the vulnerable user groups, really, I don't know if the terminology of choice would apply. And I totally welcome your reflections. So thank you.
No, I think that that's really fair. And that word has become part of, I'd say, the transportation and mobility vernacular more so in the past 5 years, mostly out of a desire for aspirations towards what we're working for and what we want to achieve. We are not providing people with the options for choice currently, not just in North Grenville, but in many other places as well. Mostly because of the system interaction or the planning or the over-reliance on a single mode, or in many cases, not the hard side of the infrastructure, but around the education, awareness, the sort of change management, the comfort and safety side of things. So I personally use that word intentionally because I believe that's what we need to aspire to, whether that's for somebody who has no vehicle, not because of their choice, but because of extenuating circumstances, or a family that has multiple young children where the parent is making the choice for the child. I think that this is about not feeling like you only have one solution and aspiring to have a greater number of options and opportunities. And I think we are not, in some cases, we are closer than we think. In other cases, we're still quite far away. So it's an intentional use of language because I want to personally have conversations like this to challenge what we've been accepting for a long time and to be able to push what we're doing from a mobility perspective as much as we can. And sometimes just having these conversations to say why choice and are we there yet and what can we do about it helps us to figure out what some of those major challenges are and what we can do from a solutions perspective.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. So I really appreciate the explanation. And just a quick follow-up just on a contextual piece, and then I'm very happy to, as I'm sure my council colleagues are, to hear the rest of your presentation. Obviously, council was quite interested in this particular study because we recognized there was a major policy gap, and that was that we didn't have an active transportation plan. I know that that's abundantly clear to yourself and colleagues, and you did speak of active transportation in the beginning. But I just want to clarify for myself, clearly this mobility master plan, which has been kind of renamed to be more inclusive, will have a very strong active transportation element, because I know that was one of the areas where it was flagged for council that our policies were underdeveloped. So if you could just confirm for me the orientation towards that active transportation plan embedded within this larger plan, that would be helpful.
Absolutely. I'm happy to take that one, Jeff, as the person who tends to hold everybody's feet to the fire when it comes to active transportation. It was actually a long conversation that Jeff and I had, and then with Colleen and Mike and Eric, about what the benefits and drawbacks were to consolidating these two. In my experience, I have worked on transportation master plans. I have worked on active transportation master plans. I have seen them happen in most cases separately. What tends to happen in many of those municipalities, if they are done separately, is you end up seeing a disconnect sometimes between the implementation of those two plans. You end up sometimes seeing a competition between the implementation of recommendations and projects, sometimes within a transportation master plan, relative to those in the ATMP. What I want to do for North Grenville, and what we are committed to doing for North Grenville, is making sure that you have a tool that doesn't pit active transportation against other transportation modes, that it brings it all together in a holistic perspective. We're already having conversations about some of the different elements of our scope of work, like road classifications and how we can bring possibly a more complete streets and active modes approach to those considerations. We are heavily looking at policies to make sure that there's alignment and that active modes and others are elevated to that level. And we will be having distinct sections and content specific to networks, projects, facilities, and recommendations that are integrated. I also think it becomes really important to make sure that you have an underpinning of a transportation demand management strategy and approach, which is something that we have in this process, which brings it all together from a programming and awareness perspective, which actually speaks to your previous comment about safety and comfort within the system. So we are continually making sure that throughout every element, we are elevating and providing equal footing for active transportation relative to other modal considerations. Obviously, transit has become a very important piece here as well. And first and last mile is not lost on us, how you walk and get to transit stops and providing that access. So we're trying to make sure that we are giving you a tool that is policy-based, that is strategic, in that it doesn't provide recommendations that compete against each other, and actually means that everybody is working from the same playbook as opposed to multiple documents.
Thank you so much. That's really appreciated. Thank you.
No, I appreciate the question. It's important.
Thank you. Claire, I think before you continue, I have questions from my council colleagues here. So I'll start with Councillor Wilson and then move over to Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to Dillon Consulting Group here. I know we're only in phase one, and maybe perhaps I should wait till the end of the presentation to ask my question, but based on only having a 1%, 109 people answer the survey, 1% of the population, will there be more public engagements, or are you going to put the survey out again? Or how do we engage the public more? Is there an opportunity to do that? Because I don't feel that we're at a stage where 1% of the population is going to dictate how we're going to move the strategy along.
Through the chair, I think that's why I made the comment earlier about not wanting to over conflate the success of or not of the attendance at some of these sessions. The technical agency group sessions, the interest holder sessions, very illuminating, very engaging, but we are definitely needing to find some other strategies to get public interest out there. I tried when Jeff and I were having lunch to really push the open house to some of the people who are at the restaurant with us, but to no avail. But that is why I know we are putting our thinking hats on how we can get out into the community more. The simple answer is we have another round of engagement. So yes, there is absolutely the opportunity, and we would be very open to leveraging some other options, whether that's local events or opportunities to be in community, or opportunities to work with groups like your Indigenous Advisory Circle or more specific groups and audiences, and leveraging some of those networks. So yes, and we're already starting to think about that a little bit more.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know that you've just become aware that we have an Indigenous Advisory Circle, which we have had probably going here for at least 3 years. And I appreciate that. We also, we as councillors and are out there also listening to the public. And quite often we're getting emails, we're getting texts as to, you know, why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we doing that? And now they have the opportunity to put that input in, and we're not hearing anybody. There's a lot of chirping out there. Where is the public? Come on, public, let's get on board and start doing things.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. I will add that we also have a number of other advisory committees, Accessibility Advisory Committee being one that would be very interested to be part of the conversation when we're talking about safe access, improved safety, and so on, and vulnerable road users as well. So perhaps that's an area for consideration for engaging with advisory committees, of which we have several others. Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Dillon Consulting, thank you for the presentation thus far. I recently read the book Walkable City by Jeff Speck. I'm not sure if you know who that is or if you've read that book, but I had so many aha moments during that, and I would just want to implement everything here. But it's really important that we move away from being so car-centric and be more inclusive of different modes of transportation. Very, very important. Not to exclude one over the other, as you said, or not to pit one against the other, but to make sure that we technically really do share the road. And so when you, unfortunately, I missed out on the in-person advisory committee meetings, etc., with your group, because I was away getting 15 to 20,000 steps every day. But my question is, do you feel that the season that this survey was done in had an effect on the responses? Because if you're talking about your mode of choice, and it's February that you're doing the survey, most people would say, well, I'm going to drive and walk, maybe if it's decent weather. But if you did the survey in spring, summer, or fall, do you anticipate that the answers would be different? when I first moved to Kemptville from Ottawa, it was very obvious to me that we were not as cycle-friendly or pedestrian-friendly as Ottawa was. I could bicycle everywhere in Ottawa, and coming out here was much more of a challenge, and really, truly had to share the road. So that's one of my questions. And when you talked about EV charging stations in the document, there was no mention of charging stations for e-bikes. And I think, like, I would like to do long distance cycling from here to Brockville, but I would have to charge my battery somewhere along the way. And if we're going to focus on EV charging stations for vehicles, I think we need to include bicycles too, or you are, again, being more car-centric. So those are my comments, and I would love an opportunity to contribute to the phase 2 for sure, because I missed the opportunity in phase 1.
Absolutely. I think definitely writing down ferociously some of those other ideas. I have read the book. It is an illuminating one. And it also helps to highlight the fact that I would say from an active transportation perspective, we need to be very cautious to think of the broad range of what that looks like. So you'd mentioned walkable city. We do need to look at walkability as part of how we think of improving active transportation, in addition to things like long distance touring, cycling routes, or off-road trails, or more day-to-day trips. So we are using some of this information to give us a sense of what those needs are. But as I said before, I think there are definitely opportunities to build it out. It could be that the seasonality impacted the survey. We do find that most people, because it's on demand and it's online and you can do it from the comfort of your own home, that it doesn't typically impact, and the questions are more on a broader basis. But I think what we will definitely try to do is through the second round of engagement is to use the better weather that we will have around that time to be able to ask some of these questions again, or build out some of the considerations in addition to evolving the questions we need to ask to inform the technical processes. So very interesting. Thank you for the reflections. Lots of notes here.
I think those are all the questions for right now. So feel free to carry along with your presentation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So I believe we'd wrapped up on this one. So we really want to understand and do as much cultivating of information that we can on how people are feeling about the way in which they are experiencing the system, as I said before, from a challenges perspective, but also from an opportunities perspective. And so we broke these limitations down into the various modes, specifically looking at walking, transit, and using transit and cycling. We had some highlights, which is really telling to us in terms of not just route location, but also facility types, as well as the supplementary and complementary elements that go along with the transportation system, like route alignment planning, maintenance and management, as well as the transition of facilities. So you're seeing the lack of sidewalks from a walking perspective, or paths, condition and maintenance, also safe crossings. We have historically, in some cases, in plans of this nature, really just looked at a route from start to end point. We try to look at how those facilities transition over roads or different features so that you're continuing the path of travel. So we will be looking at that a little bit more, of course, from a cycling perspective. And this was mentioned a little bit earlier. If you are mostly being expected to share the road, I mean, there's some wonderful, excellent new trails that you've already put in, multi-use pathways. But if you are being expected to use the road, how does the volume and speed of other vehicles affect your safety and comfort? Usually it reduces it significantly. So we want to make sure that we are also identifying considerations around cycling routing and facilities that create those spaces and places where the experience is positive, and one where people feel, and I'll go back to that word, where they feel like it is an actual viable choice because that is an appropriate facility for the right location. So similar responses to the walking and cycling, which ties those active modes together in a really great way. And then from a transit use perspective, there were some limitations indicated about reliability, needing a car instead of being able to use transit. So usually that has to do with the location or the availability or the perception of that, and the time of travel. I think sometimes that can be more of an education and awareness piece, or more of a confidence piece. And so a lot of that has to do with assessing the great new systems that you have in place right now, maybe making some adaptations based on what some of that feedback is and continually evolving, and also looking at how we can promote and generate awareness about the options and alternatives going forward. And that speaks a lot to our transportation demand management focus that I spoke to a little bit earlier in a strategy format. Next slide, please. As part of the engagement that we did, if you saw some of the display boards as well as some of the communications that we had, this phase of engagement really provides us with core foundations and directions for the Mobility Master Plan. And there are two core elements of that. One is the vision statement, and the other are supporting principles and goals. Vision statement, as you probably well know, is the aspirational statement, which articulates what we want to achieve long down the road, pun intended. It is what we are ultimately working towards in terms of the grand ambitions and aspirations for the community. We've started to use an approach that is more based on sort of co-creation and an idea that we want to establish more ownership and awareness of what this vision is. If we all buy into the vision, then we can come together to try to identify how we want to create and support that vision and achieve it down the line. We provided those three options. I didn't give all of the details for them, but at a high level, the first option was very to the point, short, sweet, branded, and simple. The second was a little bit longer, but still short, but effective, providing a little bit more detail and description. And that third was very detailed and descriptive. We actually all had our bets on which one would be the greatest preference. And I'm surprised and always interested to say that based on the results that we got from the online survey, as well as some of the other input through other engagement sessions, it was actually number 3, the detailed and descriptive vision, that has started to come to the forefront in terms of the preferred vision statement for the Mobility Master Plan. So that statement, as you can see on the slide right now, but for those who might not be able to see it, is North Grenville is focused on providing an integrated, accessible, and connected transportation and mobility system that is responsive and reflective of municipal priorities around growth and sustainability. People are able to move with ease both now and in the future, giving them choice no matter the trip type, purpose, or destination. So where we're at right now is this has emerged to the forefront. We're going to be reviewing this a little bit more, making sure that we feel confident and absolutely bringing in any of your perspectives through this process as well. And this will be part of what is the output or the outcome of this phase 1, which is the foundational pieces to the development of the strategy and the plan itself. To support the vision statement, next slide, please. We had identified a number of mobility potential goals. Goals are meant to provide more detail as to areas of focus, areas of importance, areas where we want to prioritize our efforts to achieve the vision that we are looking towards. I can't remember the exact number, but I think there was something like 15 potential goals or around there. We provided a range that reflected the background review, some of the initial investigation that we'd done, and we wanted to hear from people about what resonated with them so that we can come up with a series of supporting goals to the vision statement. Goals are really important because they help drive recommendations, they help drive metrics, they are an important touch point to be able to say we are reflecting these key principles throughout the process. So what came forward were some of these top goals. So there are 7 that we had identified: improving safety, prioritization of accessibility for vulnerable road users, cost effectiveness, responsiveness to growth and development, enhanced connectivity in the system, well managed and well maintained, and responsive to environmental impacts. As you can see, of those 7, there are 2 that really rose to the top: improvements of safety and well managed and maintained. So when I see these and we started to see the results, I see a really well-rounded set of goals that reflect even some of the conversations that we've been having around safety, around comfort, the need to prioritize vulnerable road users, the need to prioritize connectivity in the system to provide options, but also some of that operational piece of you can build it, but how do we maintain it? How do we manage it? How do we make sure that it has the right level of service and the right quality to be able to sustain over a long period of time? So again, similar to the vision, these are the ones that are rising to the top. This is what we're seeing as the starting point for the potential goals, and we'll continue to refine those and bring them forward once confirmed as part of the base for the foundations of our next stages.
Councillor Strakian, can I
yeah,
flag something
absolutely.
here or get in line?
No, you can go right ahead. I'll put
Okay.
myself right behind you. Go ahead, Mayor Peckford.
Okay. Thank you. And I took great interest in this particular slide in preparing for this meeting. So again, want to thank you for such a thoughtful presentation. I am a little bit concerned that the vulnerable users didn't rise to the top 2. I do think structurally, you know, when you look at who responded to the survey, we have to recognize that most people overwhelmingly had a license and are at an age and stage of life where they are likely driving for work or, you know, they have the means to have a vehicle. So my question to you is, I was very happy to see that vulnerable user groups were recognized among the 7, but I almost think it would be impossible for the vulnerable user groups to rise to the top 2 because our survey respondents and likely the community engagement wouldn't hear from somebody who's under the age of 15, and they might not hear from a senior who's 70 who recently lost their license, right? The people who tend to be most connected in a community are those with a lot of resources or a lot of voice or a lot of engagement. So I'm hopeful that we can amplify the needs and the considerations around vulnerable user groups, even though it wasn't in the
Mayor Peckford, we have lost you.
Okay, that wasn't just me. Sorry, I wasn't sure if my
No,
audio
it
was
all of us as well. So perhaps
Okay.
you can respond to Mayor Peckford with the portion that you heard.
I would be happy to. So the stars on those top 2, and great question, are more just to be transparent about where the top respondents emerged from. What I will say is when we put together goals to support a vision statement, they are not prioritized in any way. They are equally present in the planning approach and in the way in which we frame the plan and the recommendations down the line. So when we have the 7 or however many we end up coming forward with, these will be each equally represented. And in some cases, we may choose to elevate some over another. These are reflective of the survey results, but we are not taking them as the final and the immediate. So we do see them as equally important. We do see the need to make sure that those are elevated. If I hadn't seen the prioritization of accessibility and vulnerable road users, I probably would have had a conversation with Jeff and Colleen and Mike about making sure that we actually bring that to the forefront. So we continue to also use our professional experience and our knowledge of the community as well as input like this to make sure that we are having those checks and balances and reconciling the input that we do have with what we know that we're hearing more broadly for the community and where the trends are going. So stars are merely just to show the results that we have. All of these, whatever the goals will be, are not going to be prioritized or listed in an order of importance.
Thank you very much, Claire. That was my questions were centered around just that, just where the prioritization was or if there was any. So I'm glad that you clarified those points. And I think that answers the mayor's questions and the concerns that you had about this list as well. Thank you. I don't see any other questions at this time, so feel free to carry on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So I believe we've wrapped up on this slide. And now it's back over to Jeff because I've talked everybody's ear off for quite a bit. Thank you for your time.
So yes, thank you, Claire. So yeah, really, so that was sort of the conclusion or a little bit of a wrap up of our public engagement. Some things we didn't talk about as part of the public engagement through the surveys is that we didn't talk about specific, that was just the sort of the high level trends. We didn't speak to specific problems and opportunities that were identified by members of the public and things of that nature. So there is some more digging and sort of like harvesting of the sort of nuggets that we'll get from the surveys. That was just sort of a more of a high level overview. So where do we go from here? So the next immediate step is to confirm the preferred vision and goals for the MMP. So again, similar to what Claire was saying, we'll go in, those were the preferred. We'll go through and we'll see if there's any specific comments. I know that we had some comments on language changes to the vision, specifically vision statement 2. And off the top of my head, I don't know, was vision 3 the dominant vision by a landslide, or what did it get one more vote than vision 2? So we need to go through and sort of review some of the materials before we confirm with staff the preferred vision and the goals of the MMP. And then following that phase, we'll move into phase 2, where we will identify specific issues. So no longer just from the problems and opportunities buckets, we'll be identifying specific issues that need to be addressed. We'll be developing criteria to assess those issues, developing alternative solutions, and then ultimately identifying preferred solutions for each problem and or opportunity. At that point, like we said, we will go back to the public and to members of council, stakeholders, to review that process of the problem and opportunity all the way through to the preferred solution, where we will seek input. Are there problems and opportunities that got missed? Are there any questions or comments about the evaluation process or alternatives that were assessed for the problems and our opportunities? And then once we've satisfied that piece of the study, then we'll go into the final phase of the project, which is we'll look at more of the documentation and the policies related to the MMP. So that's sort of an overview of where we've been and where we're going. And that concludes our presentation today. And I just wanted to remind everyone that the Mobility Master Plan website is the main resource for where you can get information on the Mobility Master Plan. And then just that if you do have any questions or comments along the way, you can certainly reach out to Colleen or myself. And we welcome any additional questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I have one quick question. Round 2 of the public engagement. When is that set to begin?
So I don't have the schedule directly in front of me, but I believe it was in May. Let me just see if I can follow up. I was just looking at the schedule there today.
Definitely a month with better weather.
It'll come eventually.
Yeah. I believe it was in May. I believe in the later stages of May is where we tentatively have phase 2 engagement.
Okay, later in May. And these will be sessions virtual as well as in person. Is that the plan?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Councillor
Councillor
Colley?
Strachan,
Yeah,
I've regained connectivity.
Mayor Peckford, thank you. Welcome back.
And I did hear everything that was said. So I think I was just traveling through a poorly connected cellular route. So if I might, just going back to Councillor Strachan's question as well as Councillor Wilson's, I think that we should reopen the survey. I believe Councillor Wilson's concerns about a 1% response rate, even though I know it may still numerically feel strong. I think it's the first time we've really asked residents in our community systematically about the active transportation components of the plan, having never developed an active transportation plan before this, notwithstanding a discrete commuter cycling plan that was very specific to a subset of the population. So I think there's tremendous value in reopening the survey. A 3-week window during a really tough winter, right, may just it may not be top of mind as it will be as people start using some of our new multi-use pathways on County Road 43 and other areas of the community. So I just wanted to offer that if I'm reading my council colleagues right, I think we have a strong appetite to see other forms of engagement. And I don't know what the harm would be in reopening the survey and giving people a little more time. And secondarily, I just wanted to offer, those vulnerable user groups, and I appreciate that you spoke to it. The vulnerable user groups are not likely to be captured even in a survey, as accessible as it is. I mean, you're talking about folks under the age of 16. You might be talking about a 75-year-old senior who no longer has their license and may just not be connected to the day-to-day of the municipality. So if there's a way to contemplate specific engagement of those vulnerable user groups, I think as a council and a municipality would be more than happy to support that as well, because I don't think their voices, unfortunately, at this stage have been reflected as sensitive as you as a consulting team have been to their experiences.
Thank you. Through the chair, that's the great point. And I mean, we are here to also explore the direction that council wishes to provide. Your point, as an engagement person myself, I spend the bulk of my work doing that as a focus area, is in the next phase of engagement, we are looking at distinct strategies, recommendations, and projects that now ideally will align with these goals and these vision statements and aspirations for the community. So what those goals say to me as an engagement professional is that if we, and it's likely to, but if we see vulnerable road users and accessibility elevated through the goals, in our second round of engagement, we likely would need to go out to the committees in more detail. We would, if we had more options, I would say reaching out to schools. I've done sessions in classroom. I have done sessions with teachers, going out to seniors groups and organizations to be able to actually directly involve them. So as I talked earlier about adapting and evaluating the efficacy of these solutions, I think our goals will help drive us to those different audiences, or that's an approach that I would take. Definitely not against, and I'll defer to our team and the colleagues around opening the survey, but I think as we move into the next phase and we start talking a little bit more about the specifics of what we can do, the intent of that previous survey becomes a little bit more general. So not an option not to open it, but I can see us be very much more focused and strategic in the next stages to certain audiences with these new goals and these new directions in mind.
And I will to quickly comment on the survey. We do have the option to reopen the survey if that was something that council would like to do. Reopening the existing survey that will likely impact our timelines, as we can't fully proceed with the next steps until we have the survey wrapped up and all the input. It would seem disingenuous to open up the survey for additional comment and then just moving on in advance of receiving those comments. And I just caution that simply because the timeline to get this project completed before the fall election is going to be tight. And if we open up the survey, it will set us back a little bit. And I'm just cautious of the overall timelines of the project.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Peckford. Any questions from Councillor O'Sullivan? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question to Jeff. When you had the advisory committee workshop on March 9th, did you have a good number of advisory committees participating?
No, in fact, the turnout was relatively low. We only had, I don't have my notes in front of me, but I believe we had 3 committee members attend.
Okay, thank you.
I'd have to dig up my notes to know who attended specifically, but yeah, we did only have 3 committee members attend.
Okay, that's unfortunate. Okay, thank you for that.
Okay, I think we've exhausted our questions for this round, so I appreciate the information that you provided and look forward to the follow-up for the next round of engagement. And we'll do everything within our power to promote those events so that you get a better turnout for your in-person and virtual events. I think the advisory committees are challenged by most volunteer groups is that they participate actively and fully for the meetings that they attend, and adding in a different meeting and a different meeting time and so on makes it a little bit more complicated for many of them to fully participate. So hopefully we can mitigate some of that for the next round. So thank you very much. If there are no further questions, then I will look for a mover and seconder to receive phase 1 of the Mobility Master Plan. So we'll start with Councillor Wilson and then go to Councillor O'Sullivan. If there are no further questions, seeing none, then I'll call to question. All right, and thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Okay, and it's taken us a while to get here. Now we're moving on to consent agenda. So we have a number of items on the consent agenda. We have advisory committee board meeting minutes. We have the Housing Accelerator Fund update, Bell Hall award of tender for micropiling, 21 Clothier Street East parking lot lease agreement, and the 2025 annual wastewater and sanitary collection system performance report. Do any of those items, any members of council wish to have any of those items pulled from the agenda? I would like to have the Housing Accelerator Fund update pulled. And I believe that is going to be the only item pulled. So looking for a mover and seconder for the consent agenda as amended. Start with Councillor O'Sullivan and then Councillor Wilson. All in favor, call the question. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is then to you, Director Martin, for the Housing Accelerator Fund update.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have a formal presentation this evening. The report was included as part of the agenda, and I just want to highlight that we have completed a majority of our initiatives that were identified under the Housing Accelerator Fund. Either the item has been completed or we have a draft complete, and some certain matters will be arising to Council in the future for their consideration. What I do want to point out, and we did receive an extremely glowing email from CMHC today, in fact, to our staff about how fantastic North Grenville has been at meeting our targets. And while we had a 3-year plan to achieve our targets, we did that in 2. So we have reached the overall target of which we were hoping to achieve in regards to new unit creation. What I do want to say is that we have over-exceeded the creation of our missing middle housing, where our target is at 155%, which is fantastic, which when you look at the intent of the Housing Accelerator Fund program, it was certainly to incentivize the creation of more missing middle housing, and we have certainly blown it out of the water here in North Grenville, so it's very positive news. The only target that we're down on is the creation of single detached dwellings, which I don't really see as too big of a concern that we're not meeting that. We're about 55% of what we had identified within our targets, but we are making great headway with the addition of Bell Hall. We'll exceed the affordability target we had established as well. So fantastic and great news coming out of our Housing Accelerator Fund program and the things that we're able to achieve. And just a huge kudos out to our staff, Jackie Shoemaker Holmes, as well as Phil Mosher, who have really put a lot of time and effort into implementing our Housing Accelerator Fund and ensuring that we're meeting those targets.
That sounds like a fantastic update. Thank you very much. Great to hear this. It's positive results. Are there any drawbacks to having moved so quickly?
Thank you for the question, Chair. No, absolutely not. I think it just speaks to just the credit of how well that we're doing. We'll still receive our financial draws as through the grant program. So it just ensures that we are achieving the withdrawal of that funding through CMHC. So I think they're just super ecstatic to see us meeting our targets, as there other communities that are struggling or haven't met. And I mean, if in the news, CMHC has clawed back some of that funding from those municipalities. That is certainly not the case here in North Grenville. And as always, if we can find opportunities to partner with CMHC for other funding opportunities, we'll look for those as well.
That's fantastic. And yes, thank you very much to you and the rest of your team. I know that you've worked very hard on this, so it's great to see these results. Thank you. Any other? Sorry, go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And of course, obviously, we're really thrilled with the relationship, and thank you for your leadership, Ms. Martin, in terms of ensuring that we were able to activate our commitments so quickly. And I know yourself and Mr. Mosher and the housing manager have really been a big part of that. I know that the additional dwelling unit incentive program is marked as completed. However, I understand that as per the report, that the program runs until the beginning of 2027, which is great to see. I've understood that the uptake on that program has been fairly limited. Now, that may have changed since the last time you came to the council table. Obviously, additional dwelling units can be expensive. And I know we have some wonderful designs, but I'd like to get a better appreciation of where we sit with that particular program, because we know there was a lot of excitement in the community. There may be merit in council continuing to incentivize if we have access to external funding mechanisms through CMHC or other bodies. So if you could lend some more insight into that, or bring back a report specifically on ADUs, I think it would be much appreciated.
Through you, Chair, to Mayor Peckford. Certainly, I will task Dr. Shoemaker-Holmes with preparing a report for council with the outcomes of what we've seen so far in regards to the additional dwelling unit incentive program. I know we did increase the value just in that the initial $10,000. Although it is a significant grant contribution, you are correct in that constructing an additional residential unit does cost quite a bit. So certainly we'll bring back a report within Q2 of this year for council's consideration and review of where we're at today.
Thank you so much. I look forward to that because I think there's hopefully other opportunities to continue with that incentive program. So getting a clearer picture would be extremely helpful to council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other questions from council members in the room? Okay, so we'll look to council to receive the Housing Accelerator Fund update report for information. Mover and seconder. Okay, thank you very much. We'll do Sullivan and Wilson. And now call to question. All in favor? And that has been received. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is the minutes from previous meetings. Look for a mover and seconder for the adoption of the March 3rd and March 9th special council meetings and the March 11th regular council meeting minutes as presented. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor O'Sullivan. Are there any questions or comments about these minutes? Seeing none, calling to question, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Next item, Mr. Finley, thank you for waiting so patiently, is the waiving penalty and interest for water charges on the Kemptville campus. Over to you. Thank you.
And thank you, Madam Chair. So the report in front of council tonight is to review the request from the Kemptville campus to adjust the water billing account due to an unknown water issue was identified in 2025 and is continuing. The request is to adjust the consumption or the billing to the Kemptville campus from previous usage from 2024, as well as set a bi-monthly charge for the water consumption based on those previous usages until this water issue can be identified, water issue or issues can be identified and addressed. Some background on that. As council may remember, the municipality is responsible for the maintenance of underground infrastructure. The Kemptville campus is responsible for plumbing fixtures and water usage within the internal building maintenance items. Currently, the water billing account has an outstanding balance of just over $230,000. This is made up of just under $200,000 from consumption charges and $32,000 from penalties and interest from 2025, while this water issue had started and continued. I do note back in February of 2025, Council did approve an adjustment to the campus water bill due to a water break that happened late in 2024. And that adjustment at the time included an average charge based on previous consumption and the remaining overage drawn from the campus reserve. And that was used as the basis for this report moving forward, seeing that the water consumption or excessive water consumption source has not been confirmed as of this date. We have gone through, done some repairs, both to the water pipes. So there's been a break and a hydrant repair. It's my understanding as well that campus staff have also done some repairs to the plumbing inside the buildings. So we are working together to try and identify different issues on site and repair what we can. But based on the trending that we're seeing, there is still a persistent water usage 24 hours a day. What we did look at, again, is a waiving of that penalties and interest as in 2025 that was accrued from non-payment. And then the just under $200,000 drawn remaining from what's outstanding to be drawn from the campus reserves. Again, that was similar to what was approved in early 2025. And the idea being that moving forward, a $13,000 charge bi-monthly to the campus would be, consumption charge would be applied as we continue to look through this issue. The $13,000 was identified from 2024 consumption. And just to break that down, in 2024, a total consumption of just over 15,000 cubic meters of water ran through the water meter on site. In 2025, there was just over 44,000 cubic meters. So there's been about a 3 times increase in water running through the meter that we haven't seen an account for in terms of increased demand on campus. So that's where we're seeing this unknown source. This was a request again brought forward from the Kemptville campus to the CAO, and that was based on a review and discussion with the Kemptville campus. That's been the recommendation that we've brought forward. We will, as mentioned, we've done some repairs. We continue to look at different options to try to identify the issue, including some additional leak detection, as well as potential installation of water meters to the specific buildings to just see what each building is recording as being used in the building. So that is the basis of my report, but I am happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you, Director Finlay. To summarize, the problem is not contained and it seems to be getting worse. Is that correct?
Yes, the problem hasn't been identified. We see it, like I mentioned, we can do some detailed reads. We do see a consistent usage every hour on site, whether it's night or day. The usage is consistent. So there's an issue that we haven't, I'm not sure where that's going.
Okay, and so the work will continue until the problem is found, hopefully sooner than later. Understanding it's obviously more complicated than what was originally hoped for or anticipated. Thank you very much. Any questions from Councillor Wilson?
Thank you, Chair Strachan. Is there a way that those leaks or whatever's happening can be segregated by turning off water to each building to find out where, like, I'm not an engineer and I don't know about probably don't know what I'm talking about right now, but could you not turn the water off, say, for instance, to Purvis Hall for a week and monitor the water consumption and find out. I don't know.
Thank you for the question and through you, Madam Chair. Yes, there are a bunch of different ways, definitely, and that is one, isolate areas, see if the water continues to move or not, and you can kind of rule some pieces out. Like we mentioned, that's where we look at first anyways, we're looking at kind of non-destructive methods to try and find leaks. So that's where some of this leak detection comes. You see if you can hear some noise or vibration within the mains, just to help narrow down where to dig up. We also look to limit the disruption to the services that are being used on campus. So we can do some shutdowns. Prolong becomes difficult with some of the tenants that are there. So we work with that. And that's where some of the idea of this install water meters in each building. It'll show if there's continuous use in each building. Right now, there's one single meter that is for the whole site. So it's just trying to move forward, like you mentioned, isolate areas and confirm where it's coming from. So that is the plan moving forward.
Thank you. I think putting meters in each building would be the way to go, but then I'm not the expert on it. I just historically when they paid water bills to the municipality when it was the Kemptville College or when it was owned by Guelph, did they find the same problem, or is this just something that keeps, I know you said it's using 3 times the consumption in a year based on what it was. So yeah, anyways, I'm just trying to solve the mystery.
Can I go through you, Madam Chair? Sorry, I apologize. Yes, it's the one nuance between when it was owned by Guelph was that they were the owner. They were responsible for all maintenance, whether there was a break, a leak. So they did have, I know we dealt with them in the past a few times with higher bills, and that was usually due to leaks various places that they had to address. Now that it's the municipality responsible for a piece of it, it's kind of had a different nuance to it. But yes, they had some years of regular flow, some years of increased flow that they had to address at that time.
Councillor Strachan, can I ask one question quick?
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I note that the proposal is that the outstanding costs or monies owed come specifically from the campus reserve. And I'm just curious, I don't know if this is a question for CEO Dunlop or Mr. Finley, in light of what appears to be a fairly chronic and structural problem. We think, of course, I understand there's no full proof of that yet. It's a large draw from the campus reserve, and I'm just wondering why that mechanism in particular has been identified, given that obviously, if it is a major structural issue, is it really the reserve that should absorb that cost?
Through you, Madam Chair. The reason that we have identified in this report the draw from the Kemptville Campus Reserve is we don't know where the leak is. Is it inside the building? Is it outside the building? Whose responsibility is it? We've been working with the campus and trying to identify where it is. We have brought in leak detection equipment. We have, driven the grounds to see if there is any wet spots that may identify that there's a water break. Is it a leaky toilet? Is it a leaky tap inside of a building? So we haven't been able to identify specifically what. And under our municipal bylaw for our water, it says that anything goes through the meter is the responsibility of that meter owner, which is the Kemptville campus. So we're trying to work with them, hence the request for the waiving in penalties and interest. But as I said, we're a partner in this to solve it, but we don't know where the leaks actually are.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. One final look for questions. Yes, Councillor O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Director Finley, just sort of to build on what Councillor Wilson asked about segregating sections and turning off water sources for certain sections to see where the problem is. If you, I think, if I understood correctly, you said it's consistent. It's like 24 hours a day, this excessive amount of water usage. So you wouldn't really have to turn off a segment for a period of a week. If you just turned it off for a 24-hour period, would you be able to know then if that was an area where the excessive use was coming from? Like, could you, and are you able to turn off various different sections to segregate a specific area that may be the source of the leak? You don't know at this point if it's from inside or outside. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, that's correct. We're not sure if it's within the pipes throughout the site or within the buildings, or a mix of the both. Okay. It's all aging infrastructure. But yes, we are looking at different options, like you mentioned, of trying to isolate areas, and just how that works, on top of, like you mentioned, leak detection and different various methods. So we are working hand in hand with the Kemptville campus staff to work together, as CAO mentioned, as a group to find a resolve to this. It's just an ongoing piece right now, and there was the request for 2025, so we had to bring it forward at this time.
Okay, thank you. Well, I hope we find where it is soon.
Thank you very much, Director Finley. And with that, we will look to council that council approve an adjustment to the Kemptville campus water bill through waiving of $32,711.35 in penalties and interest, and drawing $199,719.96 from the Kemptville campus reserve, and that council approve a bi-monthly charge of $13,000 to the campus water bill until the high water consumption on site is addressed, and the continuation of the waiving of penalties and interest. Looking for a mover and seconder. Moved by Councillor O'Sullivan and seconded by Councillor Wilson. Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, call to question. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you very much, Director Finley, and best of luck on the hunt for the leak.
Sorry, if I may,
Yep.
could we just request a report follow-up within, I don't know, what's reasonable, 2 months to see? Oh, okay. Thank you. Say 4 to 6 months, please.
Through you, Chair, that's not a problem on our side. If that's council's wish, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. So next item is correspondence for discussion at this meeting. The mayor had pulled the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, OSIF, item for discussion a few weeks ago, and I believe she has requested to defer this to the next meeting when we can have a more fulsome discussion, and she is present in person. Next items are correspondence for discussion at a future meeting. Are there any items that anyone would like to pull for a future discussion? Not seeing any right now. Is that correct? Okay. We're in the home stretch. Notices of motion. We have no notices of motion for consideration at this meeting. Are there any notices of motion for consideration at a future meeting of council? Not seeing any. We have no petitions or written communication from the public. There are no miscellaneous or unfinished business items. Are there any questions from media or public? There are none present. And so with that, we'll move to the confirmation bylaw. Now look for mover and seconder for the adoption of the confirmation bylaw, that the confirmation bylaw as attached to this agenda be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed in open council. Looking for a mover and seconder. Councillor Wilson, Councillor O'Sullivan. All in favor? Thank you. And looking to adjourn, looking for a mover and seconder for adjournment at 9:26 p.m. Moved by Councillor O'Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Wilson, Kelsey. Thank you very much. We now have this all in favor. Everybody's in favor of adjourning this meeting. Thank you very much for your patience and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.